Hello guys, it's me Zane, and I have a lot of things to say. I cannot see myself on the screen because there is that little circle which actually shows me where the focus is, and it's on my face. So I wanted to talk about extinct plants because I wanted to make this into a series like Rarest Plants of Earth, and I tried to find some rare like extinct-ish plants. So I'm gonna talk about dead orchids. Okay, so before we start doing anything, before we start talking about these, I'm gonna insert this gem here, self-promotion. So you can subscribe to my channel. Also, you can follow me on Instagram. That's all. Let's start this video. Let's talk about some plants, some orchids which not exist anymore. It's a pretty sad topic, I would say. Okay, so what I do in some of my videos when I have the time for that, I actually bring in some decoration around me because I just don't want to sit with a blank white wall behind me. I always want a decoration which sort of ties into the topic of the video, but I wanted to have some like skeletons because extinction skeletons, but the closest thing I have to extinct plants are actual living plants. So welcome this plant here, which is a variegated thing, I cannot remember the name, and this is this stick Sansevieria cylindrica, which looks like something that should not exist. Hence we are gonna talk about plants which are not existing anymore. If you think my t-shirt is a little bit weird, well, yeah, it's Sunday, the day of rest. If you know, you know. I'm just wearing this super oversized t-shirt and I'm happy about that. But let's talk about some extinct orchids. So at first, let's talk about what extinction actually is and what it means, because there are some ideas about that which I want to share with you. Also, I want to point out this was an extensive research, so give me a thumbs up for that, like this video. So according to Wikipedia, a species is extinct when the last living member dies, and the moment of extinction is considered to be this death, basically, although the capacity to breathe and recover may have been lost before this point. This whole topic of extinction is just a whole mess, and it's really confusing because you have to think about a lot of factors when you think about extinction. For example, there is this Lazarus factor, whatever, when people think something was extinct for like a period of time, then actually it just reappears, for example, in the fossil records. But also, if you're considering a plant or an animal extinct, you have to think about some areas are not easily accessible. You have to do like surveys on areas and stuff, and this whole thing is a big project. If you really want to make sure that a plant or an animal is extinct, you just really have to go out of your way to do that. If you stick around until I talk about the last plant, there's gonna be a little bit of an orchid mystery, because there was a whole thing that was fun researching. Actually, I like to research some things which are just confusing and they sound mysterious, and So this whole list which I'm gonna talk about today is from the IUCN's Red List, which is the let me just remember the name, the International Union of Conserving Nature. That's the one. So I'm having basically all of the info which I'm going to talk about from there. The first orchid which was listed there as extinct, actually I found 4 orchids. The first one was the Angraecopsis. So the first orchid was the Angraecopsis dolabriformis. That name is a mouthful. So this species is considered to be extinct, and the assessed date of extinction was, well, it was a sad Christmas present. 24th December 2015. It's a gift from baby Jesus. This orchid was known from only one collection, from only one location, from only one subpopulation, so we are into a ride here. Now, I try to gather as much information about these plants as possible, but I think this information is, well, interesting for me at least. 95% of the vegetation on the original island, which I'm gonna talk about, was destroyed in the 19th and 20th century. There was an 18-month intensive field work there to find out that this orchid is still alive there or not, and collecting orchids and whatever, but nothing came up, nothing showed up. This orchid did not reappear like anywhere in nature, and the actual place is Sao Tome and Principe, which is like close to these equatorial parts of Africa. It's basically an island. So this plant was only known from one type specimen, and it was collected in 1889 and it was last seen in 1892. So that was a long time ago. Basically, there was no recorded location when this plant was collected, but the estimated range of height above sea level was from 100 meters to 800 meters. But since there is like this much information about this plant, we basically don't know anything. But then there was another recollection of this plant in São Nicolau. Maybe I'm just butchering this name, but this orchid was like very promising because, you know, recollection maybe is the same plant, but then before flowering this orchid died. So actually nobody knew if this was the same orchid or it was another orchid, because, you know, if there are no flowers, it's much harder to actually pinpoint what is the specimen, what is the ID of that orchid. So we'll never know. Oh, I just got a call. Where was I? Focus back on my face. That's great. I have a circle back on my face. Great. So according to my research, I tried to find like photos of this orchid, but actually nothing came up in Google Images. Only like 6 or 5 pictures. One of them was a Nymphinisha falcata. So the other species from the Angraecopsis genera all have these yellowy, greeny, really light flowers, and they are small flowers. So I guess this was kind of the same. Why would there be such a big difference? I'm not saying that there is no possibility for a big difference, but supposedly this is the case. So maybe maybe the flowers were small, yellowy, greeny, so you know. Next orchid is Angraecum astroarche. Yeah, the next orchid is Angraecum astroarche. So there are a lot of similarities between this orchid and the previous orchid. Again, this orchid is extinct because this video is about extinct orchids. The assessed date was on 21st October 2016. Basically, a lot of things about this orchid is the same as the previous orchid. It was found on Sao Tome, the Principe, and it was only known from one collection, from one location, from one subspecies. Again, the 95% of the vegetation was destroyed at the same time because they were living on the same island. And I have this idea that when previously I said that there was an 18 months intensive field work, I guess that was the same field work as this time in the case of this orchid, because in the case of this orchid, again, there was this 18-month long intensive field work. I guess it was the same field work. They just went there, went out, and they were just trying to find these extinct orchids there. It was collected and also last seen in 1888, and this plant was considered to be growing from 900 meters to, again, 900 meters above sea level. That's not a wide range. Now, actually, when this orchid was collected, it was a little bit better recorded, like in the previous case. So it was on the northern part of this island, and that's why we know that it was collected somewhere around 900 meters above sea level. It grew epiphytically on these lowland trees. I found again no photos of this orchid, but since this is an Angraecum, we can have a basic idea how this orchid might have looked like. The one was that Angraecopsis, and this one, the Angraecum. These plants are both monopodial orchids, which means they have a single axis, and this axis actually elongates, and that's how this plant is actually growing. I think the flowers of this orchid might have been more on the white side and more on the bigger sized side. Angraecums tend to be, in my opinion, a little bit larger. Okay, now the third orchid, which is extinct, is the Habenaria petromedusa. Interesting name choice because we have the Habenaria medusae, I think. So this orchid is again extinct, and the date says 21st May 2014. Finally, we can leave this island of Sao Tome, but we're gonna travel to another island, Cape Verde. So this species was endemic to Cape Verde. It is known from the type specimen, and it was collected in the 18th century by J.S. Feiho. I'm sure I butchered this name. There was basically no information about this orchid. There was no ecological information recorded. Also, there were no threats recorded, so there is like no sure cause. But since Habenarias are not that rare, we can again have some outline of traits that might have been true to this orchid. So Habenarias are terrestrial orchids. Also, Habenarias have these fleshy tubers underground. And basically Habenarias again have these pale whitish, yellowish, greenish flowers. Basically the growth of them is like there are some leaves in a rosette shaped on the ground or all along the stem, and the stem is just growing and then the flowers are on the upper part of the stem. I just have this vague memory in my mind, and I might be completely wrong here, but I think they are named after rein or strap or thong, which, well, all of them mean the same thing, but I'm just gonna stick with the thong here for the sake of fun. That's all the info I have about this orchid. No photos, no anything on the internet, and I tried to research all of these orchids on like other sites too, but no info, nothing. So that's what you get today. And the last orchid here is the Eulophia stenopetala. In the case of this orchid, we are already leaving Africa and traveling into Asia. It was growing in Asia. So it's from Bhutan, and always if there is anybody talking about Bhutan, my mind straight up goes to the Bhutanese passport YouTube video. I love it. If you have the time, check it out. It's a true gem. This is the first time I'm using this format of saying a number. I'm not used to this because in my language it's referred to completely differently. So it was found on 1800 meters. This just breaks my mind. It's known from, again, one site in Punaka, which is like a villagey thing there, and it was collected in the 19th century, and it was not found in spite repeated surveys. I mean, this plant, there were surveys on like other areas where the habitat would have been suitable for this orchid, but nothing was found there. And these intensive like field works were done there because this place is actually well explored and it's really easily accessible, so it was a pretty easy task in the case of this orchid. Here comes some interesting parts of this story. So there was a record from another village which is called Saling, but then they decided that this was a misidentification. So, you know, again, this orchid is just went down the drains, everybody forget about it. Nobody's seen it, stuff like that. The habitat of this orchid was pretty funny to me because it was like dry hills, nothing else. And I mean, like, well, okay, that's a habitat, but you know, that covers a lot of areas. There were no like certain threats, but one of the threats might have been, again, very specific, road widening. I started to research for this orchid on the internet as for the other plants because I wanted to provide some really useful information, and unlike in the case of these previous orchids, I found the stuff on the internet. Now, I just typed in Habenaria, or what was that? No, Eulophia stenopetala. I just typed that into Google and bang, images, articles, whatever, everything. And I was like, oh, How is that possible? This plant is like one, extinct, two, it was like collected in the 19th century, so you know, that says something. And on the other hand, I'm just finding all these articles and pictures about this plant, and I was like, well, okay, let's dig deeper into this mystery and let's see what the internet is actually offering me. There was a photo which was done by Eric Hunt, and I just could not think about anything else but the fact that his name is because he hunts down orchids and makes photos. Please, dog, don't shout at the street right now. You know, there's the IOESP, I cannot remember, Internet Orchid Encyclopedias, Internet Orchid Species and Internet Orchid Species Encyclopedia. You know what I'm talking about. You know, there was that site, and there was an article about this plant, and it was said that this orchid is medium-sized, cool-growing terrestrial orchid with 1 centimeter yellow and brown flowers. I mean, the yellow and brown flowers part comes from these pictures, because you can clearly see that these flowers are yellow and brown, and I was like, well, what's happening? It's kind of fishy. And then there was the sudden death of this mystery. It just quickly ended up. So I realized that there are 2 orchids. One of them is the Eulophia stenopetala, which is the extinct one, and there is the Eulophia streptopetala, which is not extinct. Also, there was a wiki site about this orchid, I mean the Eulophia stenopetala, but, and this is how I solved the mystery, you know, the title of the article was Eulophia stenopetala, but then again on the side where it was like the taxonomy and whatever, there was that streptopetala. Basically, on a lot of sites on the internet, a lot of websites on the internet, they're just like throwing these words like stenopetala, streptopetala. It's the same thing, don't worry about that. Well, you should worry about that. One of them is extinct and one of them is really not extinct. And then as a last factoid to this video, I just wanted to talk about what the streptopetala and the stenopetala mean. So I tried to find the etymology of these words and the meaning of these words. So strepto means twisted, and steno, I was not sure about that, and I'm still not sure about that, because steno actually stands for like stenography and stenographer and whatever, and stenographer is someone who uses shorthand. I'm not sure. I don't remember the word short writing or shorthanding or shorthand writing or whatever. And then I realized that this means that you write in a way that you use these abbreviations and symbols instead of like whole words, and that's how you can write really effectively and really fast. So this was the video for today, and I hope you liked it. Little orchid extinction mystery. Okay, so this is the video for today. Hope you liked it. If you liked it, click on the like button. You can subscribe to this channel. You can follow me. No, you can subscribe to this channel. You can like push the bell button or whatever. Also, you can follow me on Instagram and fill out my quizzes because they are fun. And see you next time. Bye, guys. You know what? I mean, I wanted to do a next episode in this series, like Rarest Plants on Earth. Ooh, what a fun series. And I was like typing in some things into the Red List website. I wanted to find out that there's a lot of juicy information about some really good extinct rare plants in the wild, and so I typed in Monstera and nothing came up. Then I typed in Philodendron and nothing came up, and then I wrote Echeveria and not even the genus came up. So I was like, well, this is going to be an interesting series in the future. So